So we've done all our rainbow, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the felt. So I'm going to be cutting out the felt and attaching it on, and that will provide the padding area for the leather. So this is my original tracing that I've got just here, and obviously you can see that it's already been used, and that's the tacking. But these inner lines, these were red on your design there. They are the templates for cutting out for the felt. So I'm just going to move that so that it's right at the edge, because I'm going to cut out the larger one first, and then I'm going to cut in, and that way you don't actually need to do 3 separate templates. You only need to do the one. So I'm just going to rip a little bit of this away so that I can start it and it's not going into my... And it'll be easy to rip because obviously you've already stitched over some of it. So I'm just going to rip all that away like that. And then I've just got my templates left. So you just take your sharp scissors and we're just going to cut around our templates. Just make sure that you hold the felt to the tracing paper, and obviously you will be at some point turning it around. It is easier if you've cut out the whole of the template, because at the moment now this is catching on my thumb here, so it'd be easier if that was not there. And right, I'm going to cut around this way. Just got to make sure that it doesn't move and slip, so when you've actually finished cutting it out, I'm just going to snip it off just there like that. Get rid of the excess of the felt there. Just make sure that's nice and lined up. So again, just going to trim that around there, holding the felt against the tracing paper. You can actually pin the felt and the tracing paper together, as that'll mean that it doesn't move. And I tend to just do it like this, because for me it's just as easy. Sometimes you can just snip a little bit further, and then when you're cutting it out, make it easier to do. So that's the very end just there. Okay, so that's our first piece. So that's our larger piece, and just make sure that it fits nicely into that area there as well. I'm just going to snip that little end off just there, and I'm going to do it away from this area here, because if I don't, you'll get little strands. So there we go, that's just nice and curved now. Right, I'm going to take the next piece of felt just here, and I'm going to place this on, and now we're just doing that inner line there. Okay, and I might just turn that around that way. Okay, you've got plenty of felt here, probably double of what you actually need. So again, just going to snip into there like that, just grasp the felt. So we're just going to cut all the way around that, like so. Just make sure that's lined up again before I carry on. Okay, so that's your second layer, and that will fit nicely into that area, just like that. Okay, so I'm just going to trim a little bit of that off. So we've got our last area. I'm just going to make sure there's no bits of the tracing paper just on there. So we've got our two clouds. One obviously is slightly smaller than the other one. I'll just move those out of the way there. And then we've got our inner area here, so we've just got to cut out this little area just there. So again, I'm just going to place it on there like that, and then I'm just going to start trimming that off like this. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move all the tracing away now, and we've got our little cloud area there. I think that's definitely that way around, isn't it? Because that's the larger end and this is the smaller end. And then we'll have our second one going over the top of that, and then we'll have our third one going over the top of that. So, attaching the felt, I'm going to actually move this one slightly up so that it's almost aligned with these loops, and that way when you put the other two over it won't form a ridge. So I've taken my thread with my needle in, and I'm just using the white thread which is included in your pack, and we're just going around the edge of the felt with a stab stitch. So I'm just holding that felt to the surface with my fingers, and my stitches are tending to be about 3 to 4 millimeters apart, which is a similar distance to your couching stitches, although you would tend to do them slightly closer together than your couching stitches. Now I'm going to sew on each one of these pieces, and you can see me doing that. Right, so I've done our first 5 stitches on the felt, and I'm going to speed it up so that you can see me doing the stitching, but it's not taking as long as obviously it would. Then I'll slow it down and I'll show you putting the second piece on. So the first layer has been attached now, and you can see the stitches all the way around it, so it's attached really firmly. As a bit of a tip, when I'm actually attaching it to the surface of the fabric, I make sure that I hold it to the surface all the time. If you don't, you could tend to get puckering. So I'll just demonstrate a little bit on this one. So if I stitch this and then I just kept on stitching it like that, it could potentially bung up. So it's really, really important that you hold it flat to the surface of your fabric. So this is my next piece, and I'm just going to slightly now overlap on the couching area. So it's just slightly coming over some of the couching area pieces. I'm just going to place that down there, and again I'm now holding it with 3 fingers. This makes sure that it doesn't move about. There is other techniques. Some people do much larger stitches all the way round, and some people do big stay stitches, so they might do a big stitch there and then a big stitch here, just to secure it in place while you're stitching round. I don't tend to do that, I just tend to hold it in place. Not everybody has as firm of a grip as I have, and so obviously if you do have a little bit of arthritis and you can't hold something down for as long, then you might want to put 2, 3, maybe even 4 stay stitches over, and some people put crosses like a herringbone over that as well. So I'm just going to stitch that down in exactly the same way, and again I'm going to actually speed this up so that you can see me stitching it, but that it doesn't take me as long as obviously it would do if I was stitching it normally at normal speed. There's our second piece now attached, and as you can see it's creating a bit more of a rounded area, so it's much nicer. And now we need to just put our third piece on, so this is our third piece that we're going to place there, and again it will lie inside of the tacking lines, just because obviously as it goes over the rounded area it will shorten in distance, it will not be quite as big, plus we actually cut it inside those tacking lines when we trimmed it out from our piece of tracing paper here. So I'm going to stitch, again I'm going to stitch that third row on now. What I will say is you just need to make sure you're being careful coming up next to or through the twist, because we're now, that second row was sometimes going through some of the pieces of twist, and this third row will mainly be going through the pieces of twist, and if you're not careful you could damage the twist. Some of your stitches will need to be slightly smaller and some will probably need to be slightly wider than your normal 3mm to 4mm, but don't worry too much about that because this will all be covered with leather.
So that's the last 3 stitches into the felt, and in the next session I'll be showing you how to stitch down the leather.